Welcome to another episode of Civic Affairs. I'm here, Riley Smith, here with my co-host Andy Martins. How's it going tonight? You were just down at council.
Great, yeah. It was
lots going
passionate, pleased with Nargoma, and Sault Ste. Marie's getting 57 jobs, hopefully starting by the end of the year, and there's a lot of good things going on.
So let's talk about the Nargoma, because they voted on that while you were down at council. So the city staff made the recommendation to
totally scrap it.
To scrap it if the working group can't find a home for it by the end of the winter.
Right.
And it passed 7-6?
7-6 to scrap it by April of 2019.
So by April 29th of 2019, if the Nargoma does not find somewhere new to go, it will be scrapped. According to this council, now we were just talking, this could change, right?
Well, it will, and most likely will if there's a new people council on council. And the sticking point on it, Riley, is that the council is overshooting here. They are not responsible for the Nargoma. It's owned by Parks and Recreation Canada.
Now, the other thing too, and this was a point raised by Derek Pierce, who's running in Ward 1. He's a strong supporter of the Nargoma. If they spend the money on moving it, they'll lose all the profit that they've made in the events and stuff that they. So it's a lose-lose situation for them.
It really is. $150,000 plus.
And then then they move it, then they have nothing to work with.
Right.
So they've really built up a revenue for the
they did, yeah. And it's a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
I think it's silly on council's part to reject the Nargoma. I've been there, and it's a tourist attraction that we have, and it's at a great location. And
so we'll see how that goes. Could still go either way. There's still a lot up in the air on that.
It was a close vote, so
exactly.
You're right. Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the other thing you mentioned, which is 57 jobs coming to Sault Ste. Marie. You filled me in a little bit before the show. Can you tell me a bit more about what you heard at council?
It's a testing deal that is software testing. I talked to the gentleman that's the president. He's got banks, he's got lottery corporations. He doesn't have OLG yet, but they feel that it's strategic enough to move to Sault Ste. Marie. They're from New Brunswick, and they have offices across all of Canada.
Now that's software testing, so we're kind of moving forward in the innovation, which is great because, I just read today that Canada is like the furthest behind in artificial intelligence. I know it's a little bit different than the software that we're looking to test, but if we can move forward in the in the STEM fields, I mean, that's critical to competing on the global scale.
We need to do better, and this is the whole problem where with software and testing like this, it doesn't matter where you are in Canada.
Exactly, because it has the capabilities to reach further. And now the other great thing about that is it's not just creating 57 jobs. It sounds to me like it's going to be creating meaningful jobs, in IT.
Paying jobs,
Absolutely. So we are reaching out to the president of Plato, and hopefully we can bring him into the studio tomorrow to talk a little bit more about what he has to offer the Sioux. Now, considering this was the last council meeting before the election.
Yes, it is, but not the last council meeting of the year for this council. And that will be November the 5th.
And they covered a lot of stuff tonight. They brought forward the request for proposal was approved by Scott Thornley.
Right.
To develop a visual identity and branding strategy for Sault Ste. Marie.
Well, there's another issue that people have been saying this council continuously to Roger Brooks, now this Scott Thornley. You got to start doing things, not having studies and paying people thousands of dollars tell you what is common sense.
And that's something that Donna Hilsinger brought up last week on Civic Affairs was, a little less talk, a little more action. Like,
that's right.
How many studies? But that being said, the city received 12 requests for proposal. They went with the Scott Thornley, his group, and the budget. The one good thing about this, not the one good thing, but one of the good things about this is it will be paid for out of the future Sault Ste. Marie project budget, which consists of funding from NOHFC and FedNor. So it's not coming out of any taxpayer dollars, which is great. That being said, it's hoping to improve the way the community engages current residents, hopes to improve morale, attract investment, all that stuff that Roger Brooks talked about as well, relating to revitalization. So we'll see how that plays out.
Another exciting show coming up.
Another exciting show coming up. We will be having Police Chief Hugh Stevenson on next, followed by Tim Marsh, Ward 4 candidate, and lastly Luke Dufour, who is running for his second time running.
Yeah, this is his third time. He ran
in the by-election as well, right?
Yeah, the by-election.
So
he finished second.
We'll have the three of them coming up, and we'll be back with Civic Affairs just after this short break. Welcome back to Civic Affairs. I'm here with our first guest of the evening, Police Chief Hugh Stevenson. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very fine.
Good. Well, thank you. I know you're busy. Thanks for joining us on our show.
Glad to be here.
So, last council meeting, you presented a little bit of an update on Project Heat so far. What can you tell us about that? I know that the project got extended till the end of September.
Mm-hmm. Well, Project Heat was high enforcement action teams, and what it was designed to do was deal with the concerns of public safety in the downtown core. And so the service, the entire service got together, including the civilian staff on the back end, the court staff, the frontline officers, both senior and junior members. And we dealt with the open distribution of substances, illegal substances in the downtown core, as well as some of the prostitution issues. But more importantly, we were dealing with the people that are distributing it in the community. And our goal was, as I've said many times before, not to punish the user, but to punish the people that are putting it out on the streets to make money. Opioid use and drug abuse is all about making money. And unfortunately, they prey on the vulnerable people in our community.
Right.
And those people then end up in a situation where they need to feed that habit, and that's where we've seen additional break-and-enters and theft from autos.
Right.
And that's to feed the addiction issue. So if we deal with the drug issue, and we take the drugs off the street, and we take the people that are distributing the drugs for profit, then we can have an impact on community safety.
So it kind of has a trickle-down effect on all of these other crimes as well.
Everything is interrelated, yes.
So you've managed to get drugs off the streets as well as some guns and weapons as well.
That's correct.
So, in your opinion, Project Heat's going until the end of this month.
Yep.
What's left to be done?
Well, there's always work to be done, and what we've done is introduced a concept to this community. And we've demonstrated to this community that when we all pull together, we can take a concerted effort to deal with it. On an ongoing basis, however, what we're doing is committing 2 full members within the service to this initiative. It's called the CORE unit. And the CORE unit will work with our frontline officers and our specialized units in continuing this role in the community.
Now, CORE is Community Oriented Response and Enforcement Team.
Right.
When is that starting after Project Heat or with Project Heat? After? And how long is that? Is that a 6?
Well, it'll run probably for 6 months to a year, and we'll assess how much value it has for the community. We'll assess the impact that it's having on
the public perception of safety, as well as we'll look at the data to see whether or not, we're increasing our occurrences, etc. But at the end of the day, what we want is a sustained approach to this. We didn't want to start it and then just end it. We want to continue it, and we may increase it in time as we see fit.
Now, something you mentioned in your update to council, and I think it all kind of correlates with this, is the issue of catch and release. How do you, in your opinion, when you're through your years of experience, how do we fight that?
Well, maybe fight's the wrong word. Conciliatory may be better. Let's work with our justice partners. At council and today, I'll be very straightforward. It's not about blaming any one particular sector in the justice system, but it is the rallying call I'd suggest for all of us to start to work together to deal with this issue. My concern is that the fear of the justice system is being limited or mitigated when the accused knows that they can be out by 3
There's no
p.m.
real repercussions.
Unfortunately, if there's an interest in them continuing the offense, and they know they're just being processed and out again, there's limited value to that other than when they actually attend court. And we have individuals that are out on the street on their 3rd and 4th release. And unfortunately, that does put the public at risk.
Right.
I think my numbers were pretty clear, 154 arrests compared to 100 the same time last year. So the service is doing our work to get them before the court. That's the police officer's job. Bring the evidence, say we need them kept in custody because either a primary or secondary ground risk to public safety or going to court. But if they then get released, we're dealing with them the following night or 2 nights later, the same person, and bringing them through the system. So what I'm saying is, maybe we need to, as a justice sector, reevaluate all of our individual roles. Maybe I need to point the fingers at my own service in terms of what we're preparing for bail.
Right.
I'm prepared to look at everything and not blame people, but really we need to do something conservative. I also believe the provincial government has a role in looking at this after a number of years of having this policy in effect.
And so, in addition to the catch and release being a public safety concern, it's also it's exhausting the police resources in a lot of ways if you're constantly pursuing the same offenders over and over.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. If we arrest the person once and assume that they're going to be held in custody and they go out and do it 3 more times, that's 3 times the workload on the same individual or group of individuals.
Now, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about what you think this next City Council can do moving forward to continue the work that's been started here in the Sioux community under your leadership in the police force. So we will be right back on Civic Affairs after this break. We're back in the studio with Chief Hugh Stevenson. Now, we talked a little bit about Project Core, which is coming up, and we talked about Project Heat, which has been going on all summer. Now, with the municipal election coming up, what are your hopes for the next City Council in terms of what you need in order to run and create a safe community for Sault Ste. Marie?
Well, since I came here June 14th, I've had nothing but overwhelming support from Mayor and Council and Police Service Board and the community.
That's great to hear.
It is good to hear, and it's very, it brings a lot of confidence not only to me, but the police service that stands beside me and with me. And so really, I look forward to the same amount of support. We're well funded. We're not looking for additional bodies. Right. And we have enough resources to do our job and do it quite nicely.
So you're hoping for under a new council, potentially a lot of new council members, maybe so, maybe not. You're hoping for a continuation of what you've...
The same level of support that we've enjoyed since I've been here, for sure. Yes.
And, okay, so now I want to talk about something that's coming up. So we have cannabis is going to be legalized as of October 17th of this year. Now that date's coming up pretty quickly.
Yes, it is.
Are you guys prepared?
Absolutely. We've had many conversations with our neighboring police services across the province. We are all in the process of devising our regulations both for medicinal marijuana as well as how we treat marijuana in the public and our membership. So all of those issues have to be put down in writing and reviewed by my senior management team and the board. What I will say, though, is that whatever we choose in the next week or two, we are going to set the bar high, high to the extent that the professionalism of policing has to be maintained at all cost. Whether it's alcohol or whether it's cannabis, how our members utilize it, related to the workplace, I didn't say within, but related to.
Right.
All those issues have to be decided upon. And I know the federal government, DND specifically, has come up with a strategy, and we'll be examining that because I feel they've set the bar relatively high in terms of professionalism and the safety of both our members in their role and the public.
So despite legalization, there is still an expectation, you know, amongst police that same with kind of to be treated the same way as alcohol, that there's not excessive use and
Absolutely. I mean, it's a substance, it's legal, we have to accept that, but we also have to be consistent with how we treat other substances that are legal as well.
Right.
And so I think at the end of the day, if anything, it'll set even higher standards for both substances in terms of how one comes to work, how one prepares for their shift. These are emergency workers. They respond to save you from potential harm and respond to emergencies.
and they have to do so quickly.
And they have to do it with good judgment.
Right.
And good judgment means that you come to work of clear mind and body. And so whatever standard we set, it will be the highest. We may be challenged on it, but from a police service perspective, we want to take the most professional road available. And so far, DND seems to have that approach.
Now, one more really quick question for you. How about the training on drug-impaired driving? Is there a lot of those resources in place now, or are they still coming down the line?
So there's, the federal government has issued an approved device that will be put into legislation. The criminal code, the regulations will outline what devices we can use to test for THC in your body.
Right.
And so we as a police agency will have to follow that because that's the government criminal code approved screening device. So that along with the training will come along. We have officers trained already in drug abuse awareness and testing. And so we'll just follow along with what the federal government suggests is the right way to go.
Well, that's good to hear. It sounds like you guys are on the right path to being prepared for that date. Like I said, it's coming up pretty quick.
It is.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Chief, and it was great to hear an update from you, as always.
Thank you.
We'll be back on Civic Affairs after this break with our next guest, Tim Marsh, running in Ward 4. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Civic Affairs, live from the Superior Media Studios on ONNtv. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Civic Affairs for the first time, candidate for Ward 4, Tim Marsh. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
How do you feel about running against these experienced incumbents? We talked about that in the green room.
It's honestly intimidating. It's this whole experience is a learning experience for me. And knowing that, Marchie Bruno has been doing it for 8 years, Rick Neer has been doing it since I was literally born, 1988. So apart from a small gap in there, I think it was. So yeah, it's pretty intimidating, but I'm cautiously optimistic is the way I like to say it.
What are you intimidated about? In general,
well, so I'm going into essentially I'm stepping into a job role that I have very limited experience in, where, as we were saying, they can pretty much talk me under the table. They've been through all the steps. They've done it all before. They have a lot of the support that I'm just trying to get now. So it's intimidating, the fact that it's always a little bit intimidating being the underdog, but it just makes me want to work a little bit harder. So.
And I agree. I've been there, and it's tough to get 2,000 votes or thereabouts.
Yeah.
What are the biggest concerns that you're hearing in Ward 4?
So, a lot of it's been basic. I've run into a lot of people who have just been nice to meet you, continuing away, but a lot of it's been the same kind of stuff you hear time and time again. Construction, roads. One gentleman today specifically had who lives directly between SIS and what was Domtar at one point. I don't remember if it's still Domtar, but he lives directly. Hates living there, but it was his father's place, and so a lot of the construction and stuff like that is a big issue. Crime recently, I know, especially in my old neighborhood down on Moody Street, there was back when I lived on there was a string of break-ins, garages every single night. At least 3 garages were getting broken in. So a lot of people are stressing about that. So.
Wow, that's not good, and people have to go to work and they have to feel at ease sleeping at night, and this doesn't help it at all. What have you heard door knocking so far in the ward? What are people talking about?
Again, those are essentially what I've had conversations about specifically at the door. It's for me, it's hard for me to be extremely critical about the city because I just love it so much. I'm very a silver lining kind of guy. Like something bad can happen in my life, I'm like, yeah, but look how great this turned out. So it's hard for me to be negative and pick apart what's going wrong in the city. Probably one of the most frustrating things to me right now is I'm actually finally seeing some improvements from council in just this past 6-7 months, and my only worry is that just because we're coming up on election, or have they actually been working towards that for the last 4 months?
The timing seems to be
just a little
funny.
bit too convenient.
Some have said that council's not moving fast enough in the last 4 years.
Yeah, I like to say it's kind of like we're always last to show up to the party, and then even then we don't give it 100%. It's just it's a little disappointing for me. So,
how can council create better conditions for business, do you think? Because I don't think we've done that quite well in the last little bit.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I was talking to somebody just today, and they were saying that just in general, the city has done a great job at trying to continue to be small. I think that there was pride in that at one point, being like a thriving small city. Right. And that's been squashed. I'm not sure where we need to go. I know there's people who want to invest in the city. I've talked to a couple people who know people who've been looking at it for a while, but they've been getting squished down time and time again, or pushed off to the side, or deterred by one thing or another. So I'm not 100% sure on what to do to get to the point of getting more people in. I myself, with another gentleman, we're opening a new franchise at the end of October, so I'm doing my part to try to bring in new jobs, but...
oh yeah, which...
So we're bringing in Booster Juice. It's a Canadian-owned franchise. It has about 370 locations across Canada, and so we're bringing that in today. That's why it's taken me so long to come. The first couple times you asked me, I was in Edmonton for training, so...
Did you? Yeah, that's great. You're doing your part, and that's the thing, is that people have to keep in mind that whatever council is in place, if they keep rubber stamping what staff says, sometimes council has to go against staff's recommendations, and the high taxes and red tape we have in this city. Did you find any indication of that?
Yeah, I think it was, it's kind of so not to throw anybody, so Rick Nero has been in council since 1988. Right. At what point do you start taking credit for the failures as well, not just your compliments that you've been saying that you've had for so long? It's there's been so many. I like to use Bonsu as an example. And I know that's not a specific city-run thing, but I've seen that drop specifically for so long since I was a kid. And I feel like the city has just kind of followed that same pattern where we reached such a high point. I don't think it was the climax to us, but it started to going down. And now it's, unfortunately, you always draw faster than you climb back up. So
you do, yeah. Let's take a break, Tim, and we'll be back to you in the second segment. We'll be right back. You're watching live coverage of Civic Affairs. Welcome back to Civic Affairs, live on ONNtv. We're chatting with Tim Marsh, who's a candidate for Ward 4. Tim, as a councillor, how would you do things differently if elected than we've seen in the last 25 years?
So differently, I think what a lot of people are looking for is transparency, and to me that just means honesty and being accountable is a big thing. And I like to believe I hold myself to those standards on a daily matter, and I don't think those, if they have been an issue over the last 25 years, which based on what people are almost saying to me, it seems to have been, I don't think it'll be an issue for me, because again, I live my life like that. I'm an honest person. I try not to lie. I do everything in my power to, if I can't hold myself, or if somebody can't hold me accountable, I always hold myself accountable, so.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have. One of the mayoralty candidates is talking about 0% tax increases for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
If elected on council, do you think that's possible? And do you think the community needs that kind of thinking?
I think a freeze might be beneficial, just as like almost like a political standpoint, like for that candidate. I don't know if it's possible personally, but I would personally love to see it as well. But it being possible, it's hard to say. I'm a believer. Like I feel like the council has done a lot of saving money lately, or trying to, and they're afraid to take those risks. And I don't know if tax increases are the thing, but I definitely think taking a couple more risks and whatnot is the right way to go. So if we're just looking to save money, yeah, tax.
The idea came, I guess, because of the minimum wage increase. You've got the electricity rates that Kathleen Wynne increased over 5 years, that people are tapped out, and their concern is to keep seniors in their home as well.
Yeah, I can completely understand that. As a homeowner and as somebody who deals with that all the time, I'm often strapped, and I can totally understand that. That's why I'm like, I would love for taxes to stop. But I don't know personally, and that's partially because like I only have so much experience in it. Like if it's possible. So.
Right. Can I get your input into should the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie travel more to promote this community?
I would think so. I definitely don't think sitting behind a desk is going to get anything done, except for here. But no, definitely traveling within reason. Obviously, I'm not saying like spend your entire year out on campaigning for more business, but if there's opportunities out there and you know they're out there, going out there and making the personal contact, not just sending a letter, is definitely a far better choice than just...
The idea that there's a lot of competition out there and nothing happens by itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Sault Ste. Marie has to be more aggressive than everybody else.
Oh, 100%.
Whether it's in Toronto or anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
Norgoma was a hot issue on City Council tonight. I was there, and what's your feelings about Norgoma?
I love it. Like, and I love it because my kids love it. So, like, I think my son's 9. He's essentially anytime we're downtown, he makes me get on the boat, and so I've seen it every time. But I always find one little thing that I didn't notice before, and it's great. I would love to see it stay. I would love to see it like brought back up to what it was. A little bit, like put a little bit of money into it, but if it has to go, then it needs to go. But I personally love it.
Would you, if elected, vote based on? I don't think voting based on personal opinion is good. You've got to vote on the big picture, vision, and what's good for this community.
Oh, 100%. So I've worked in the service industry for 15 years. Essentially, my job was to make people happy. And my personal feelings isn't going to do that. Who I am, my personality is going to help, but making sure you get what you want is what I've been doing for 15 years. So.
Right. Get a customer is always right.
Yeah, exactly. And within reason, obviously. Any person who's behind the counter can tell you that within reason, but doing whatever it takes to make that everybody feel like their problem is being resolved is the goal of customer service, and that's essentially what you're doing on council half the time.
I need a quick answer from you, Tim, on the last question.
Sure.
What made you throw in your name to run as a candidate for councillor in Ward 4?
It was a really spontaneous decision. It was just, I love this city and I want I just want to give back, and I
Great.
thought this was an awesome opportunity to do so.
Great. Well, thank you so much,
Not a
and good
problem.
luck to you. We're about a month away from the election.
Yeah, it's
and
coming up fast.
That's Tim Marsh, candidate for Ward 4. Riley will be back after this break with a candidate for Ward 2, Luke Dufour. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Civic Affairs. I'm here with our final guest of the evening, Luke Dufour. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, and you just came off the campaign trail before coming here.
Sure did. Been knocking on doors all evening.
And how's that going?
Really well, really well. It's probably the main part of the campaigning that I do is getting out there and knocking on residents' doors and hearing directly from them what their concerns are.
So that face-to-face contacts?
Absolutely. I think it's huge.
So, you're running against six other candidates in your ward. That's quite a few people. How do you compete in running against that many people? How do you keep up with what everybody's doing, or who's going where, and who's saying what?
Well, I don't actually spend very much time following the other candidates. I really focus all of my energies on knocking on doors and talking with residents. I feel like going into this campaign, I had maybe at least a little bit of an advantage in familiarity just because of my prior runs for council.
Right.
So in 2014, I ran in the old Ward 4, which comprises the western half of the new Ward 2. And then in 2016, I was only 100 votes behind Sandra Hollingsworth for the old Ward 2, which is the eastern half of the new Ward 2. So I figured a race that close, I should probably give it another shot.
Oh, absolutely. So that kind of brings me to my next question. This is not your first shot at a council seat. It's not even your second shot at a council seat. It's your third shot. So you've already dedicated a lot of time to learning the concerns of residents in that area, be it the old Ward 4, the new Ward 2.
Absolutely.
How are you approaching this campaign differently, or are you taking the same approach? I mean, it obviously served you well if you came that close.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only different approach I've taken this time around is I have a tendency to kind of really bury myself in research sometimes. I'm a really detail-oriented person. I like learning about the nuts and bolts of policy, and so I think this time around I've kind of limited myself in my research, and so that I could really just set aside the time and the mental space to
Focus on the bigger picture.
focus on the doors, and focus on talking to people and meeting as many people as possible.
So what are the most common things you hear from people in Ward 2 when you're knocking on their doors?
A lot of people, I mean, you have your normal municipal concerns with the potholes and taxes and things like that. I think people are really looking for a candidate who has something genuine to say. People want, they want specifics from their politicians. I think that people have a really good nose for, you know, when someone's saying the same old thing versus people who've clearly read the budget, who understand how the city works, how bylaws work, and
Who've
things
done their
like that.
research.
Absolutely.
So, talking about, you know, council and the different people that you've spoken to going door to door, you know, you're a young person. What are some of the concerns that you've heard from young people? Because we always hear about this major issue of out-migration, of the lack of economic diversification. Where do you stand on those issues?
Well, I think I hear that not just from young people. I
From
hear that from
everybody.
their parents, from their grandparents, from, you know, a lot of people who maybe made a life for themselves in the Sioux, and they really wanted to pass that kind of culture, that life on to a new generation. But you know, the reality is it starts with jobs, and a lot of people, that's kind of what leads them away from the Sioux, and I believe that it's an integral part of leading them back.
Absolutely.
I think that jobs is the one factor, but I also think the culture is another big factor. I think younger people, they expect certain things from their city. They expect, you know, a vibrant downtown, good
Things to do.
entertainment. Totally. They expect that their city government is going to at least try to help to support some of those things as well.
So as a council, you'd hope to do those things?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so we will be back with Luc Dufour just after this break, and we have a couple more questions about his thoughts on council. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Civic Affairs, and we're here with Luc Dufour, who is running in Ward 2. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit. You mentioned earlier taxes being one of the concerns. So my question for you, do you think it's, because this has been a hot topic, we've had the mayor's kind of, or mayoral candidates kind of snipping back and forth about this as well. Do you think it's possible for a mayor and council to not raise taxes during a 4-year term?
Certainly that would be possible. Do I think that it's a good idea? It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the growth of your assessment base, so how much money is coming in.
Right.
But it also depends on if you're willing to cut services or not. Really, the municipality traditionally only has 2 levers to affect our tax rate.
Right.
That's to decrease services or to increase the tax rate. Now, some of the things that I'm proposing in my campaign, although they won't necessarily change the grand scheme of the tax rate, I think that there's actually a lot of money in the capital budget and in capital forecasting that could really help to alleviate some of the infrastructure needs that we've had here in Sault Ste. Marie.
So what are some of the, fill us in a little bit on your campaign. Like it sounds like you've kind of done your research on this.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things in the capital budget that you found that?
Well, so since I started paying attention to municipal politics in 2013, I've noticed that the city, as far as the departments go, not traffic does a 5-year plan for the roads,
right,
but city departments have always done single-year capital forecasting. So what that means is each department, when looking at what they need as far as building improvements, things like that, they would always only look 1 year ahead of time. And that resulted in us putting some capital money into buildings that we then divested ourselves of.
It's very short-term thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Steelton Senior Center. We closed it down, I believe, in 2016 and moved it to the Northern Community Center. But in 2014, we had put about $250,000 in capital upgrades into the building. Same thing with Maycourt Daycare Center. So I've been advocating with councillors for the city to start doing 4-year capital forecasting. I think that incentivizes longer term thinking, and it gives councillors an opportunity to really look at what's coming forward and to start finding creative solutions to the funding and the constructing of these projects.
Now that kind of brings me to my next question. There's been a lot of talk, and amongst citizens and candidates alike, that a lot of the time at council meetings it's too much rubber stamping, not enough action. Can you comment on that?
I think that certainly that can be a concern. I think it varies councillor to councillor,
right,
how much that's an issue. I think that it's important to have councillors who understand how things like businesses work, taxes work from the get-go. I mean, getting to council is not necessarily the time to start doing municipal politics 101. You know what I mean? Whereas if you've had some background there, if you've served on boards and committees, if you've volunteered in the community, and especially if you have some kind of business, or in my case, my background's all construction, so I have a good understanding of how capital budgets work, and that kind of preparation really gives you the opportunity to go in with good questions and to be an asset to staff too, because they're there at the direction of council.
So ultimately, having council on council that are already prepared with the knowledge to some extent would make meetings more effective.
I certainly think so. I mean, council is always only as effective as its 6 most engaged and effective councillors. But I think that the deeper the pool of talent we have, the more effective the council will be as a whole.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Luke, for taking time off your campaigning to come in and join us on TV. Appreciate your time. We will be back to wrap up the show after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Civic Affairs. I'm here with Andy Martins, and we're wrapping up our show for the night.
Another show's done.
Another show, another action-packed night, another week closer to the municipal elections.
Yes.
So, if you don't know your candidates yet, stay tuned to ONNtv, because next week we'll be interviewing incumbent for, we have Sandra Hollingsworth.
Right.
We have Ozzie Grandinetti, and we have Rick Nero. Now, these are all incumbents.
And that hasn't happened for a long time.
Right, so...
And all people that have not been on this show.
Absolutely. Now, I'm interested to hear what they have to say, and it's always interesting to hear incumbents defend their last 4 years in council. So it's always a nice perspective to have, you have these new faces like we had tonight, Luke Dufour, Tim Marsh, and they're bringing forward all these ideas, but then when you're talking with incumbents, it's a lot about what they've done so far up to this point, and are the people happy with what they've done?
That's right. And
That's what we're going to find out.
These incumbents, you'll have different points of view, too.
Absolutely.
Beyond that.
So aside from that, we had City Council tonight, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of coverage on some of the decisions that were made coming up next week. They were passing a lot of resolutions tonight, so hopefully we can get to some of those for next week, like the on-demand transit service.
That's right.
The community bike sharing program. These are all expressions of interest and requests for proposal that the city's bringing up in council. So some exciting stuff might be coming to Sault Ste. Marie.
On-demand is very interesting, the transit, because they're not driving around in the routes
aimlessly
anymore.
Yeah, it's for people that need it, where they need to go, and it's servicing those periphery areas that maybe the optimized bus route doesn't take care of anymore.
So it was a pilot project in Belleville, Ontario,
and it was really
worked
successful.
well.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to seeing how that all pans out. But that wraps up our show tonight, Andy.
Great.
So tune in next week, where we'll be speaking with Sandra, Ozzie, and Rick Nero.
You got it.
Stay tuned on TV and at Sioux Online for more news.